The door creaked open, and the dim light from the hallway spilled into the room, casting long shadows on the walls. The air was thick with tension, and every sound seemed amplified in the stillness of the night. John stood at the threshold, his heart pounding as he peered into the dark living room. His mother's voice had drawn him here, a voice that was both familiar and sinister, a voice that had once been the source of comfort but now sent shivers down his spine. "John," she called, her tone dripping with a mixture of impatience and something else, something darker. He hesitated, his hand gripping the doorknob tightly. He could feel the cold metal biting into his skin, but he couldn't pull himself away. Not yet, not until he knew what was happening. "Mother?" he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. There was a rustling sound from the depths of the room, and then a soft click as a lamp flicked on, bathing the space in a warm, yellow glow. His mother sat on the edge of the couch, her eyes wide and unblinking as they locked onto his. She looked older than he remembered, her face etched with lines that hadn't been there before, her hair streaked with strands of gray. But it was her expression that struck him most. It was one of defiance, of something almost predatory. "Come in, John," she said, patting the spot next to her on the couch. "We need to talk." He took a tentative step forward, his mind racing. What did she want? Why had she called him here in the middle of the night? The questions swirled in his head, but he pushed them aside, focusing instead on the way her gaze never wavered, on the way her lips curled into a sly smile. As he reached the couch, he noticed something small and metallic glinting on the coffee table. It was a syringe, half filled with a cloudy liquid that swirled lazily as she moved. His stomach churned, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. "What is that?" he asked, his voice cracking. She picked up the syringe, rolling it between her fingers as if it were nothing more than a simple toy. "Just a little something to help me relax," she replied nonchalantly. "You wouldn't understand." His mind flashed back to the day he'd kicked his wife out of the house, the day his mother had accused her of infidelity, of betrayal. He'd believed her without question, just as he'd always done. But now he wasn't so sure. The doubt gnawed at him, growing stronger with each passing second. "Is this why you told me to leave Sarah?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Was it all just some sick game to you?" Her smile widened, and she leaned closer, her breath hot against his face. "Oh, John," she purred, "you've always been so naive, so trusting. You thought I was looking out for you, didn't you? But you see, I was always looking out for myself." He recoiled, his body trembling with anger and disbelief. How could this be happening? How could the woman who had raised him, who had taught him right from wrong, turn out to be such a monster? "Why, Mother?" he whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "Why would you do this?" She shrugged, her expression indifferent. "Because I could," she replied simply. "Because I wanted to. And because, deep down, I knew you'd believe me. You've always been so easy to manipulate." He felt a surge of rage, a primal need to lash out, to make her pay for what she'd done. But before he could act, she reached out, her hand brushing against his cheek in a gesture that was meant to be tender, but felt like a cage closing around him. Now, John," she cooed, "don't get upset. We still have so much to discuss." He pulled away, his eyes blazing with fury. "I don't want to discuss anything with you," he spat. "I just want the truth." Her laughter echoed through the room, a sharp, mocking sound that made his blood run cold. "The truth?" she repeated. "Isn't that what you've always wanted, my dear son? Well, here it is. Everything I've ever told you has been a lie. Everything." He staggered backward, his mind reeling. How could he have been so blind? How could he have let her deceive him for so long? "So," he began, his voice shaking. "What now? Do you expect me to just sit here and take it? To let you hurt everyone I care about without a fight?" She tilted her head, considering his words. "Perhaps," she mused, "or perhaps you'll finally realize that you can't win, that no matter what you do, I'll always be one step ahead, his fists clenched at his sides, his teeth grinding together. He had to do something, had to find a way to stop her, to protect those she'd hurt. But how? Where should he start? "Get out of my house," he growled, his voice low and dangerous, "and don't come back." She raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by his outburst. My, John," she said, standing slowly, "such fire. But you forget, this is my house too, my home, and I don't intend to leave." He stepped forward, his chest tight with emotion. "Then I will," he declared. "But mark my words, Mother, I won't rest until I've exposed you for what you are, until I've made you pay for everything you've done." She smirked, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "We'll see about that," she replied, her voice dripping with confidence. "We'll see." He turned on his heel, ready to storm out of the room, to put as much distance between them as possible. But as he reached the door, she called out, her tone softening for the first time. "John?" He paused, his hand hovering over the doorknob. "Yes, Mother?" "Be careful," she warned. "You might think you're strong, but you're not, and when you fall, well, I'll be waiting." He swallowed hard, his resolve wavering for just a moment, but then he steeled himself, his grip tightening around the doorknob. "We'll see," he muttered, throwing the door open and stepping into the hallway. The cool night air hit him like a slap, clearing his head and sharpening his focus. He had to move fast, had to find a way to undo the damage she'd caused. But where should he start? Who could he trust? As he walked down the hall, his thoughts raced, a plan beginning to form in his mind. But before he could fully grasp it, he heard a noise behind him, a faint rustling that made his heart skip a beat. He spun around, his eyes scanning the darkness. Was she following him? Was she trying to stop him? "John," came her voice again, this time fainter, more distant. "Where are you going?" He didn't answer, his feet moving faster as he headed for the stairs. He had to get out, had to find someone who could help him, someone who could reveal the truth. But as he reached the bottom of the stairs, he heard another noise, louder this time, coming from the kitchen. His pulse quickened, his breath catching in his throat. Should he investigate? Or should he keep going, putting as much distance between himself and his mother as possible? The choice was his, and the consequences of that choice could change everything.